Vince McMahon or WWE or TKO or any corporation, when they give you a first-class ticket, and I say give in quote, there's been very
concessions that WWE would give you. So I know, like, for, you know, the guys who are on $1 million plus, you know, some hotels would be thrown in, rental cars, that kind of thing, business class flights. Would you have ever been in a position to ask for these things? Or did you even attempt to ask for concessions such as this?
Only in my last contract as a joke with Johnny Ace did I asked for $750,000, rental car, first-class tickets, and a hotel. Good God, Steve, I can't give that to you.
Said they didn't want to give Steve Richards because he wasn't no top star and he wasn't one of Vince McMahon's favorites. Let that have been one of his favorites, like a John Cena, Triple H, Randy Orton at the time, Edge, Booker T, Undertaker, Kane. Guaranteed they would have got it without question. They would have got more than that, actually. But they weren't. Steve Richards, not, much respect to him, he was not a main event star, so they didn't see no value in him. But he's spot on what he's saying, though. And I want to see him what he said again about the whole, they're getting their value, their money's worth out of people who even gets the tour bus. Let's continue on.
I said, well, I had a 50-50 shot, right? And he laughed because actually, yeah, you did. Had a 50-50 shot, but no, I had no leverage whatsoever. There's been very few times in my career I ever had leverage, and I was self-aware enough to realize that. That doesn't mean I let anybody walk all over me at times. Well, I did at times. Let's take that back. That's the wrestling business in general. But, that kind of stuff with concessions, here's a little lesson for this is where talents don't get it. Do you really think Vince McMahon or WWE or TKO or any corporation, when they give you a first-class ticket, and I say give in quotes, when they give you that, or they give you a tour bus, or they give you the free hotel room, they already know how they're going to get that back. You're still paying for it. You're never going to beat the house in Vegas, and you're never going to beat the office. You just got to take, like I said before, am I getting screwed less than I'm comfortable with or more than I'm comfortable with?
Something I didn't ask before and I should have done was, and I think you already hit on it pretty much, but do you know when the freezing of the contracts due to injury came into force? Because apparently it wasn't in 2008 when you were last there.
No, it wasn't, and I don't know exactly when they did that. But to me, that's always a tactic of, I would rather the talent want to choose to be there than try to tell them, no, your year that you were hurt and here and worked here doesn't count at all. It's a very slippery slope. And like I said, I think it was a case-by-case basis. And obviously, if you had heat with the office, or if you went and made demands and tried to get concessions, I think they would extend you and then do that. Now, if you had a high-dollar contract, I believe they would renegotiate it because you were hurt and try to do it in their favor.
Even with Drew McIntyre, I think they kept extending his contract due to injury as well. So even at this time, they're now doing it for almost all talent, it seems like. Do talent feel the need, probably more nowadays than beforehand, the need to return early from injury if their contracts are being frozen?
In WWE, I believe so, because there is still an incentive. $200 to $250, it's a good amount of money, but you want to make more, and your window is very, very limited. So I would say talents do want to come back. The wrestling personalities are very unique. We do take pride in doing that stuff. There is a badge of honor type thing to say, I came back in a month from this injury. You know what I mean? And showing the office that you want to come back early with the hope that you're going to get taken care of, that they're going to see you're a good soldier, you came back early, you're willing to suffer through for the company, and you're hoping to get rewarded with a push or a longer push or a more sustained push, or which leads to more money, obviously. So yeah, I would say we're our own worst enemy. I think there's still very much a thing where the coaches, the doctors, the trainers, and the office need to protect the talent from themselves.
Downside guarantees, to go about it once again, don't include any merchandise or any other royalties for games or anything like that, do they? So unless there is a shortfall. I can't
speak on that today. I don't know how it's factored in. You had your $75,000 a year, in my case, guarantee. I took a weekly check. That means I have 3 or 4 quarters if the video game is during that contract year to get quarterly checks applied to my downside, then get the check at the end of the year. If I'm on pay sheets, then those quarterly royalty checks will be paid directly to me at that time.
Are there a guaranteed certain number of bookings for a contract, a guaranteed contract that you signed, if you're healthy, of course?
No guaranteed contract bookings as far as number of bookings you're going to have.
Yeah,
but I
like,
do
like in the
remember
old one was like you had to get like 10 in a year, and that was all they gave you. But yeah,
10 with no, I remember 10 with no money guarantee. You would only get 10 days per year, and
150.
Yeah, and everybody was on pay sheets.
So, what other guarantees or anything else like that did the WWE guaranteed contract promise you, aside from the money?
Well, there was the death clause. There was the promise of them not being in the death clause. You have some stuff in bold letters on our show notes. That death clause was like 1 or 2 font sizes above the Mercedes Monet title. You knew death clause was in there, and I apologize. I used to keep all my contracts and everything, but I lost them in the move from Georgia to Florida. Otherwise, we would literally bring it up on the screen, and if we can find it, that would be great. It does exist, and it was put in there after the Owen Hart tragedy.
Tell me you did not just say that.
Did you guys know about that clause? Did you guys know about that clause? After Owen Hart passed away, they have a clause in your contract that if anything happens to you while you're on, wrestler or anything else, that they are not liable or responsible for you in case you do end up passing away. That's crazy. I did not know that. Puma the Pig said, yeah, the time between injuries and returns definitely feels shorter. Definitely. Mr. Forte said RVD is in the Hall of Fame. Sabu was better IMO. Yeah, that's a very good argument. Welcome to the locker room, but yeah. Let's continue on to see what Stevie Richards got to say about these contracts. I didn't know all this stuff happened with the contract. So many little bit small piece of fine print that we did not know. This is what anybody that wants to be a WWE wrestler, this is what you're looking forward to. Or think about becoming a professional wrestler, especially doing it full time. This is what you're looking forward to. Stevie Richards is giving the gems right now of what's happening if you get on a WWE contract. Granted, I know Stevie Richards, been out the game for a long time, since 2008, but some things, as they say, as more things change, more stay the same. And they definitely have remained the same over the course of years, despite being bought up by TKO and everything else. And we're going to continue on.
Any other information about what you can and cannot do while under contract? So obviously you can't, if you're with WWE, you just can't go wrestle for, at the time, let's say TNA. But were there any other things that specifically they said you could not do or could not do without permission?
I would assume that they took a nod from the NFL and maybe the UFC, now that TKO owned both. That you can't jet ski or paraglide, or you can't skydive or ride a motor. These things in the NFL do exist for big money contracts. If you're caught playing basketball, pickup game of basketball, and you blow your knee out, if you ride a motorcycle, that was put in after Ben Roethlisberger had the motorcycle accident, or it was more like specific about that kind of stuff. I didn't have anything like that in my contract. But I have no doubt if it came up and you weren't really favored by the office and they were looking for a reason to get rid of you, they would do it.
Well, Lex Luger famously, because he was picked up by the WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation, he couldn't even make that first guest pose thing because he had a motorcycle accident that ended up having that plate in his arm, and that took him out of TV. And that would have failed either way. The WBF, it was terrible. But that took him out of there being their star for that promotion for 6 months, 8 months, something crazy like that as well. So maybe that was in their minds as well. With guaranteed contracts, renewals, and maybe giving your notice, how does that work? Do you have to give them a certain amount of time before you negotiate with another company, or you say that you're not going to re-sign? How does it all work?
Well, I never was in that position. I did ask for my release one time after the amazing ECW pay-per-view, December to December, which ended 42 minutes early. I remember standing there, and Lashley's in the Elimination Chamber, and it was 10:42, and I'm next to Rene Dupree, who basically, we wrestled a dark match where we could have very easily been first match, the most important match on the show. The first match, we could have been the most important match on the show. But Lashley's there. I'm standing next to Renee, and I think one of the office guys probably stooges it off. And pyro starts to go off. And I said, man, I hope they have 18 minutes of pyro. Because it ended so early. But I asked for it then. They denied it. Other than that, what I believe is you have to, much like if you rent an apartment, you have to give enough notice, anywhere from 2 to 3 months, or you have to declare that you're not accepting, say, an extension or an option. They didn't have any options when I was there, but I believe now they have, you have a 3-year and then you get a 4th-year option, much like, the rookie deals for NFL quarterbacks. I didn't have anything like that. My stuff was pretty straightforward. Here's your deal. It'll come up. Here's your new deal. Come up. Here's your new deal. Then we don't need you anymore.
For a recent example in TNA, Josh Alexander had made it clear that he wanted to leave TNA, but he had like a 3-year contract and the 3rd year was optional, and Anthem re-upped the 3rd year, so it's sort of like tough. That's it. Like the company has the option to, and you get no say.
Well, how do you feel about that, though? What do you think that does to the talent? What do you think that does in the locker room when the locker room sees the office treats the talent that way? And I don't think anybody's getting rich in TNA, so you're preventing Josh Alexander from going somewhere else.
But he signed. I mean, I sort of go, that's the risk you run to make your name, one rung up from the indies kind of thing. You go to TNA. WWE are clearly watching, and it's a way to get your name out there. Same with Joe Hendry or Jordan Grace, as we've seen. It's one of those things where you sort of take your chances, I guess, in that respect.
So let's put it
you may not be getting paid.
Let's put it this way. This is the once a tap dance, the game of chicken. When you first go in, they're going to offer you the opportunity. So that means less money. There's also a perception, especially in WWE. I learned this. If I come in as a $75,000 a year guy, which there are people like Rock was on something like that, and look what happened to him. So there is opportunity.
I think he
started out like
25.
500 a week or 52 a year. He was doing 500 a week, I think, when he was in Memphis as Flex Cabana.
He was on the right. This is something. So as you may well know, I've written a book on The Rock. This is one of the couple of things that I had to make an assumption on. That USWA was probably paying him bare minimum of $40 a night, every night, or maybe not Sunday. But WWF at the time, were also keeping people on a retainer. Adam Copeland, Edge, was on a retainer of something like $300 to $350 a week, and I suspect Dwayne Johnson was at the time as well. So at least in Memphis, in USWA at the time, he was probably one of the best paid people there, because he was getting an extra 300 or what's 40 times 6 to 240. Yeah, thank you. So he was probably making $540, $550, somewhere between $550 and $600 a week then. But then when he signed his first contract, I think it was either for $125 or $150. I'd have to check the book, which is a really good contract at that time because he saw a lot in him. And supposedly he was talking with Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler, and he was not going to sign for that because he was thinking, well, maybe I could get more money in WCW. And apparently, I don't know if he convinced him or just reaffirmed, Lombardi just told Dwayne, and he said, sign this now, you're looking a gift horse in the mouth, and Vince will do something with you. WCW won't, or most likely won't. So also with WWE, probably more than WCW, and you may be able to shed more light on this, is with WCW, especially with the high money contracts, that was one thing that stopped some of the younger talent from being elevated, because you were basically pushed as far as what you were being paid. So like if Lex Luger's making $1 million, then you have to justify his $1 million by pushing him a certain amount, regardless of whether he's in a position to make that money back for the company.
Yeah, and WWE works that way too. Like I said, $75,000 a year guy. I was under the impression that Rocky was getting 75 when he first came in as Rocky Maivia, because that was the standard in a way here and there. So if you got more, Lombardi's right. When you're over that 100, 125 or in the 150s, you at least got a chance to be in the IC title picture. Back then, if you're 200, 300, you're like, okay. And that's the way I wish I knew when I came in, but I had no choice. Just like Josh Alexander going to TNA. I need the exposure to TV time. I need the opportunity to get over. So I didn't know that it was kind of like, well, we can just sit you at home for 75 and eat that and not even care. You can lose every match in 75 is still a pretty decent investment that we don't feel like we're losing money on. The TNA thing, and I said it before, TNA is an indie with TV. So you have to do whatever you can do. I don't even know why they have contracts. The contracts only favor the office anyway.
Wow, you guys hear that? He said TNA really favors the office. And I noticed when people run in TNA, become TNA World Champion, men or women's, when their contract's up, they are out of there. It's bye-bye, they're gone. And next thing I know, they're either in WWE or AEW, and they get very lucrative contracts. So that's true. Look at Jordynne Grace, for example. I just heard a couple days ago that her contract's supposed to be up next year. And WWE is very interested in her, with the collab with TNA, NXT. So we can see Jordynne Grace in WWE once her contract expires with TNA. Look at Moose. I mean, when his contract's up, he's going to eventually leave TNA as well. So I heard TNA paid the very least. So he got a point there. Continue on.
Contracts hardly ever favor the talent. So
is guaranteed, because as we said, there's like 3 different versions. There's just pay what you work, guaranteed contracts, and then downside guaranteed contracts. What are the pros and cons of downside guaranteed contracts?
Well, it depends on the length. And it depends on if all 3 to 5 years is the same exact amount. In other words, if mine was 75, 125, 150, or 200, at least I know if I can outperform my contract in year 1,